Well, they were clearly trying to lean in very hard to his biography as, you know, farm son of the farms of the American plains, as a high school teacher, someone who served in the National Guard in the military for 24 years, and most notably as a football coach. He was actually introduced by his late 1990s state championship winning football team. And if you've ever seen, 45-year-old guys crammed into football jerseys, you can understand that this was endearing and a little nuts at the same time. It was really, again, designed to introduce him as a regular guy, the kind of next door neighbor you would like to have to help fix your car or, mow your lawn. He was introduced by one of his players as the kind of guy who would help you out on a snowbank. And so, it didn't lean very hard on policy so much, even on his time in Congress or as governor, but much more on sort of humanizing the ticket in a way. And let's face it, appealing to, white male voters who might be a little nervous about having a woman of color at the top of the ticket.
Well, as you say, appealing to humanising this whole situation. We've also learned a bit about Tim Walz's family and what kind of support he might get if he was to hold one of the country's highest profile roles.
Yeah, well, his family was there, a large extended family, in fact. He talked about he and his wife's struggles to have children. And, they went through some fertility treatments, which has been, of course, a big policy issue in the U.S. Over the last year or two. He talked about how much he loved his wife and kids. His son actually got up and gave a sort of very emotional shout out to his father. And that made a lot of the sort of the greatest hits clippings of the evening. So, again, trying to show sort of an all-American family that, from the Midwest that, again, kind of guy you'd have a beer and a barbecue with.
What was former President Bill Clinton's main message when he spoke?
Well, he started out by pointing out that though he left office more than 20 years ago, he's still younger than Donald Trump. So clearly the Democrats are trying to shift, who's the old guy. That target, was very much on Joe Biden, of course. And now Donald Trump is the old guy. Clinton, was clearly slowed down a little bit. The contrast, he's much younger than, say, Michelle or Barack Obama, but the contrast in energy was pretty clear. That said, he tried to point out, Trump's narcissism, his sort of, he said, don't listen to the lies, listen to the eyes. When he talks about his grievances and sort of a lack of a forward-looking policy vision. And Clinton is very good, again, going back to sort of, regular guy next door. Clinton is not quite that, obviously, given his career, but he is someone who has shown himself able to connect the Democratic Party to, sort of rural and ex-urban America, and that's going to be pretty important in this race.
Well, there were quite a few celebrities as well. Oprah Winfrey, who made a surprise appearance, singer Stevie Wonder.
Yeah, and John Legend and Sheila E. actually came out in honor of Tim Walz's Minnesota background and performed a Prince song to great acclaim. So again, always a little bit scary to see middle-aged delegates dancing on national television, but they did their best. Democrats have, the advantage of star power. I think it's fair to say Hollywood and the music industry are pretty left-leaning, and so they have sort of a better stable of performers that they can call on. The downside, I suppose, is this pushes things late over on the East Coast of the United States. Tim Walz didn't get on until after 11 o'clock at night, and that's been one criticism of the Democratic agenda, but of the Democratic planning, rather, for the convention. But that said, if you were watching, and certainly if you were in the hall, you were very excited about what was going on.
Tell us a bit more about the mood in the convention, watching these middle-aged people get up and dance and all these performers. It must be quite uplifting for many. Tell us what is also expected on day 4 and how that might compare with Kamala Harris speaking. Will we hear about more issues on the final day?
Yeah, well, certainly, the mood in the Democratic Party has shifted dramatically, since President Biden decided he would not run again. That candidacy, people, have a lot of appreciation for President Biden. As you saw, I think it was the first night of the convention. That said, they were pretty concerned about his ability to be the standard bearer against Donald Trump. And so the shift to Vice President Harris has been, dramatic in terms of mood, shifting to, they keep talking about the politics of joy. Which of course is a nice contrast to the overriding political mood in the United States. As Vice President Harris comes on herself, and obviously this fourth and last day will be all about her, a lot of it, again, will be, I think, about biography. People don't really know who the vice president is. It's rare that they rise to the public's attention during their terms. She didn't have an immensely long background in politics before she became vice president, more experienced than some, but certainly, not somebody like Joe Biden, who had been around for 50 years before he rose to national office. I think you'll see a lot of, again, leaning on who she is, trying to introduce herself. The Trump campaign is clearly going to try to define her identity and her career in ways that she doesn't like. So this is the Democrats' chance to really introduce her in ways that they do like, right? Her, California career as a prosecutor, as a senator, her work, of course, her family. And yes, I hope a little more policy than we've seen so far. There have been efforts to sort of talk about her record on everything from criminal justice to immigration. But I think one thing she will want to do is to establish a positive vision looking forward. Again, the contrast with Donald Trump. They keep chanting, "We won't go back." And that sort of turning of the generational page and perhaps the policy page is a real theme of this convention.
Do you think Donald Trump is rattled by any of this? He's held his first outdoor rally since the attempt on his life. How is his campaign going?
Well, I think it's certainly struggling to adapt to the new reality of a new candidate against whom the old attacks are not working as well as, they seem to be landing on Joe Biden. I mean, again, now Trump is the old guy. Now sort of there's more focus on his own, verbal missteps or policy statements. And he's not necessarily happy about that. I think J.D. Vance, the vice presidential nominee on the Republican side, was picked as sort of a doubling down on the Make America Great agenda. And maybe that's not now what he needs. So he's a little flustered by that, perhaps. But he's out there. They're trying to counter program the Democratic convention. They were focusing yesterday on security issues. Today, I believe they'll be at the border, the southern border of the United States, talking about immigration, which they see, perhaps rightly, as a Democratic weak point on the policy front. So they are definitely trying to wrest attention back. So far, though, when Mr. Trump has done press conferences to try to sort of get the media spotlight on him, he sort of relapsed into grievances. He keeps attacking Kamala Harris personally, calls her stupid, veers into racial profiling effectively, and this is not helping him. And he's getting a lot of advice from within the party that he really needs to turn the page to policy. This is tough for him. That's not his instinct.
Really interesting to talk. Professor Andy Rudalevige, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, Simone.